Hello, Joe. I'm very excited to have you with me today.
Hi, Joe. How are you? It's nice to be here.
Let's kick us off. Who are you?
Yeah.
Where are you from and where are you based now?
Okay. So I am Jo Brownlow. I am based in Singapore, originally from the UK, but moved to Singapore 18 years ago as a first foray into. I'm going to close down my WhatsApp. Our first foray into being an expat, and we did go back to the UK. About 4 years later, and we spent a year back there, and then we came back to Singapore. So we've moved to Singapore 3 times in the last 18 years. The last time we moved was we went to Malaysia for 8 years, which was literally over the causeway. You know, JB, that's, got Legoland, and there's a school called Marlborough there. So we were there for 8 years. So yeah, we've been on the move for 18 years, but I think we're sort of pretty settled now. We've actually become PR. So I was a trailing expat for a while, but a trailing spouse, but now I'm totally ensconced in Singapore for you.
There you go. You've drunk the Kool-Aid. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah. I think for us, it was a security blanket thing, as in realizing that my husband, he's not getting any younger. And if something happened with his job, we could be in a position moving back to the UK where slight recession going on, no experience being in the UK for 18 years, kids in, like, my eldest is doing GCSEs this summer, the younger one's starting GCSEs next summer, or this summer as well. So it's a really important time for stability for the family. And I think we're all quite settled. I think, my business seems to be gangbusters. He's actually very settled in what he does, my husband, but you never know. He's in sales, but we'll see.
Okay, so take me back 18 years. How old were you guys? What year are we talking? Give me some.
Talking 2005, I was 33, little spring chicken. We'd been married for a couple of years. Got married we'd been married for 3 years, and we were struggling to have kids, having known that we were going to struggle to have kids because my husband's got something going on where it's tricky to have kids. And, Paddy, originally, my husband, comes from his parents. His mother was brought up in India. His father was born in Burma. And his parents, had very expat lives. He was an expat in Singapore at the age of 5 and also in Thailand. So for him, when the opportunity came for his job to move him, he was like, yeah, I'm up for it. And I was very much dubious. But I was under quite a stressful job in London. We were partying quite hard. So we sort of wanted to grow up a little bit. So yeah, the opportunity arose. And actually at the time, Singapore was a value for money place, weirdly, very different from now. So it was a really great opportunity for me to sort of sit back and sort of have some time out and become an expat wife for a while.
So nice. So what were you doing? What was this high pressure job that was fueling / funding the partying?
Well, it was, yeah. So my husband, he does ad sales. So he was working for Time magazine. I was working for a recruitment consultancy, but I was doing personal PA work for Robert Walters. And so it was quite a sort of a stressful role. And I think it was also, just being that age, our group of friends, we were all sort of big party people, and we just hadn't grown up yet. And I think I'm quite glad we made the move to sort of move out of that comfort zone of every weekend's going out partying rather than traveling and seeing places and being mature and stuff like that.
Adulting.
Yeah, precisely.
I see. So okay, so did he moved to Singapore with Time magazine?
Yes. So they transferred him.
Yeah, how fabulous. And so how, I know that it sounds like he was like, okay, yes, sign me up yesterday. How did that sort of conversation come up, and obviously you'd been sort of thinking like maybe we do need to start growing up, but how did that all sort of come about? What was that sort of decision-making process like for you guys?
It took actually 3 months for the whole role to be sort of discussed back and forth. So it was one of those situations where it wasn't like a out of the blue and him saying, I need to do this. It was actually a 3 month slow, at first, of course, I was like, no, why would I do that? And then we slowly sort of came around to it. I mean, it's very out of character. My family are very sort of British, lived in the UK for, there's been nobody traveling to different countries. I mean, we went on holiday, but it wasn't, we don't have expats in the family. So, it did take a bit of persuasion for him, but it wasn't too much conflict. I was quite happy about the thought of stopping work.
So what did landing in Singapore look like in the early 2000s?
It was, we lived in Holland Village, which is a lovely part of the world. And it was really lovely. We met some lovely, lovely people who I'm still in contact with. In fact, there's very few of them left, but in fact, I saw one of the couples this weekend. So, it was, we did a bit of partying, but it was sort of more mature. We'd go out for nice meals, and it was $3 to the pound, whereas it's like 1.6 now. So everything was really good value. And it was, it was weird. Having been in London, it was such a busy, fast-paced life. I found Singapore just very laid back. And now, weirdly, I find Singapore not laid back at all. So I don't know whether it's me that's changed or whether it's Singapore that's changed, or maybe it's, I'm in a different arena now. But yeah, it was a lovely, settled, it was very happy.
Yeah, that's cool. So how did you guys, those early friends, how did you guys find them? Were they condo friends? Were they work friends?
They weren't condo friends. Do you know what? It was normally friends of friends that you knew in the UK. That whole, in fact, I remember a couple of, you go on a date with a girl for lunch and you get to know each other. And it's like that whole, do you like them? And if you do like them, follow up call. It is like dating, really. And, you have that where you meet somebody and you think, oh, they're really nice. And then you don't hear from them. And all that, that is quite funny. So it was, the core friends actually happened to be people that we knew were friends of friends in the UK or something. And that was sort of how you start off that relationship.
My gosh, that's so funny. Like, we have a lot of people that talk about their, friends of friends and introductions and things, but that whole, I haven't actually really ever delved into that much with people about the dating side of things, but it legit is, isn't it? It's like,
Totally. I mean, actually,
testing people out how you would a potential life partner, but your friends are potential life partners.
Totally. But, do you relate to them? Have you got the same ethos? What happened when we moved out here was Paddy actually got moved, and I had to continue on with my job because they paid me extra to continue working because it was, I was lucky that, they just needed to keep me there for a further 3 months to get things handed over to somebody else. And Paddy was on his own. And so he sort of started meeting a few people. And he tells me of one night where he'd gone out with this group of people and thought they were really nice, but got completely plastered. And I think made a bit of a tit of himself. And he never heard from them again. But do you know what? We still see the couple in Singapore. And actually, I'm quite friendly with it. But whenever I see the wife, she's very nice to me. But it's one of those situations where,
18 years on, and still you didn't become friends.
I still remember it really clearly. So yeah, anyway. But yes, I think, you get into your groove and you feel, I think it brings you closer together as a couple, actually. I think because you are sort of there to support each other through it. Because, you're used to having that automatic relationships that you've grown up with around you the whole time. And so you don't even have to think about a social life. Now you have to strategically sort of think, who am I going to meet and charm, and, networking is a bit weird.
Yeah, but also thinking about what that looks like as a couple. I think just going on leaving Paddy to free rein your friend making before you get there. I've been in a very similar situation, and I think maybe some advice to spouses who might have rather wild partners to maybe ban them from socializing until you get there to supervise. I had a very similar situation.
Yeah, or do lunches, not big nights out, because
when we moved to, my husband had I don't know, he would have had probably at least a month, I think, in Scotland before I got there. Maybe it was 6 weeks. It was a considerable. Well, look, it was long enough for him to get pretty much banned from the one kebab shop in the town that we lived in. So in that period of time, he managed to be one of 2 Australians in the whole town and the only one with a beard. And so he would try and then go to the kebab shop and they would be like, you are not coming in here. We know who you are. You're the bearded guy, the bearded Australian guy who was really rude to us last time.
Oh my God, that's pretty awful, especially somewhere like Scotland. It's quite small. Well, if he was in 100%.
And let's be honest, that is that's a key part of a young traveling couple's life is a kebab after the pub closes, and when you get banned, and they would still let me in and they would let me buy him one, but he had to wait outside.
Oh my God, they kept it going for a long time.
The whole time we lived there. The whole time we lived there. They wouldn't let. We were there for over 12 months and they wouldn't let him back in.
So was that related to his job? Sorry, I need to turn it around. Was that related to his job? He got moved across there, but you only spent a year there?
His job, yes, his job playing rugby. So
okay.
Wow. This is a pre. I don't actually call them expat years. I call them WAG years, where I got to do some nice expat wifing, but it was WAG life on the side of rugby fields around the world. So no, that was the job was rugby rather than a career one. He was a semi-professional rugby player. I would say that term very loosely.
Yes.
But it meant that we got to do stints in Scotland and in Canada. It was fabulous.
Nice. Yeah, so you've been a trading spouse for a long time. Or a trading girlfriend, maybe, at the time, were you?
No, we were married. We were first married. Yeah, we'd only been married for about 6 months and we had a bit of a panic and went, oh, gosh, this means we have to buy a house and have kids. And freaked out, and we were like, let's get out of here.
Oh,
much to our friends' horror in Australia. They were all like, hang on, you're supposed to stay here and buy a house and have kids. And we were like, and so we didn't. We moved to northeast Scotland.
God, the beautiful place. Where in Scotland was it? Because Paddy's Scottish as well. He's half Scottish, half
north of Aberdeen, in Inverurie we lived.
Inverurie. Well, Paddy's family, they have a little cottage up in a place called Ardguy, which is north of Inverness. You have to drive for an hour north of Inverness, so that's even urban. But it's a beautiful part of the world. But yes,
and definitely a different experience. Like we, like I said, we were one. There was another Australian coach at the club, and then that was it. We're the only Australians in this whole town, and it was just it was fabulous. It was. I've had bigger culture shocks. Moving to Kentucky in the US was a bigger culture shock. It's still been my biggest culture shock ever. But it was just so fabulous in that concept of. I've talked to some people that have expat, whatever you would say as far as that, done their expat stuff in places that are less mainstream. And I feel that was what our time, when I retrospectively look at our time in Scotland, was definitely a lot more off the beaten track and a lot more of a immersive experience, because there just wasn't other people not from there. Like it was And actually, no, do you know what? I shouldn't say that. It wasn't completely, because it was in the height of the oil and gas time in the North Sea. And so actually Aberdeen was actually quite a melting pot of people. If we'd actually lived in Aberdeen, I think it would have been different. But in the sort of, we were 20 miles north in the countryside, and it was very much still small town Scotland, and it was just so beautiful. I loved it.
Yeah, it's lovely. Paddy's always hankering after going back to Scotland. I'm like, no.
Okay, so that's an interesting question then to ask a PR, a permanent resident of another country. How do you guys talk about home? Do you refer to home as the UK? Is home like what does the I always find it really interesting talking to long-termers. Like, you're nearly 20 years away. What does that concept of home?
Going home in the summer. We go home in the summer. We've also got a place in Malaysia. That's where we were moving. So we own a home in Malaysia. And that, I suppose, is the place where, after the boys have finished studying, we might, the cost of living in Singapore is so tough that we might turn that into sort of our family home. And, but home, we totally call it home, because the UK home, because that's where we brought up. I'm not sure how the kids see it. They just go back every summer. Archie was born 5 years after we arrived in Singapore. Was it 5 years? No, I don't think it was that long. It was 2007 we arrived. No, 2 years after we arrived in Singapore. So Archie was born in Singapore and is totally, loves Singapore. Once, that's why we ended up doing PR, because he was really up for doing national service.
I want to circle back to that. So continue, and then we can come back to national service.
So they just don't have a connection apart from grandparents. They don't, we've talked about, university, and at the moment it's sort of up in the air about the thought of doing UK university. I would love them to do university in the UK. But, we'll see. It's interesting that they don't have a connection. And I speak to friends who, like a friend of ours who, they were born in Hong Kong and grew up in Hong Kong, but they live here and they're PRs, and the kids, and they still talk about the kids going, they do look on the UK as home. It's weird. And, it is strange, but I will grow old in the UK. There's no two ways about it.
That's then been my next question that I've been asking people of late, not so much on the podcast, but when I am talking to friends, especially long-termers, is like, where do you want to be old? So that's
definitely in the UK. Not sure about Scotland. Rather be somewhere like the Cotswolds, which is very nice. But no, I'd rather be in a lovely countryside, sort of in the UK. So
with some seasons.
I do miss the seasons, even though I'm definitely a warm weather person. I don't miss the cold. We went back for Christmas not last Christmas, but the Christmas before. No, we don't go back too often. We've done, I think, 2 Christmases. Yeah, we did one 7 years ago, 7 years prior. So this is 9 years ago. Yeah, we don't miss that season.
How funny.
I don't mind autumn and spring, but winter, not my favourite friend.
Fair. Now, I want to come back around to permanent residency and Singapore and national service and sons. So there's a really, really interesting thing. And if you're happy to talk about this, I would love to sort of ask questions around these things, because for a lot of people, this is a very, very foreign concept. But do you want to talk us through, 1, what national service is, 2, who does it, and then 3, how that impacts families' decisions to become permanent residents here?
Yeah. Well, I think the reason why we got given permanent residency is because we have 2 boys. Now, we've been here for 18 years and we only got it last year because we only tried, when I first set my business up. So I first set my business up, and you have to take on a local employee when you're a DP holder, and you have to, get special permission to work for your own company, which is a bit ridiculous. So that was all. We only started floating that idea when my husband was thinking, okay, so what if we do go back to the UK? What are we going to do long term? So we spoke to my eldest. Now, my eldest has always had some neurological challenges. When he was very little, and this is how I fell into the functional medicine space, was he had some really bad gut issues, which were causing this massive brain fog, which made us think that he might be autistic, but in fact it was candida, which is ridiculous. But he does have, he's been diagnosed ADD. Now, when he loves something, he's incredibly able and capable of doing it, but he's very right-brained and very artistic, but he's always challenged with the school. And he's now at Dover Court, which is a brilliant school for kids who've got neurological challenges, but he's in the mainstream schooling, so he doesn't need any special accommodations during school time. Now, he is very into being fit and sporty, but talking about national service. So when you become PR, if you have boys at the age of 18, when they've finished their upper schooling, which is A-levels, IB or whatever, they have to do 2 years doing national service for Singapore. Now, this involves, I think the first 2 months are basic training. And if the child has sort of any, isn't very fit at all, then they go to a slightly different training to the ones that are just, the kids that can just get on with it. And then for the rest of the time, they can go into different roles. Some can be in a desk job, some can be with the police, some can be, doing all different types of roles in the Defence Force for Singapore. Now, for us, the conversation, we spoke to so many friends who've got kids who've done it, and actually the ones that have got the neurological stuff going on, they've said have actually benefited a lot from the training. And my husband he doesn't really believe in discipline. He believes in persuasion, which is very different from my upbringing. My upbringing was very much, do what I tell you to, don't even ask, sort of type thing. So we've sort of got a merged upbringing for the kids where, there's a bit of softly, but there's also a little bit of discipline. But the way I see it, and I know it sounds a bit rubbish, is it will add in a little bit of lifestyle, education for the boys, because they've been brought up with a helper who cleans up their bedroom on a Monday morning. I tried to get her to not go in there during the week, but she can't help herself. I love my helper because she's been with us for 10 years now, and I wouldn't, because of what I do, there's too much, work for me to do, and I have too many priorities about having really healthy food in the house. But, they could do with a kick up the arse. That's what I feel is it's going to actually benefit them. My younger one is a little bit reticent. Well, I'm underestimating it, actually. He's really not happy about the whole idea. But he's going to learn a lot as well. So I think it could be the making of them. And it also gives us the opportunity for when the younger one is doing his higher education, that the older one, he'll do his NS, but he'll have that flexibility of maybe working part-time or it just allows us to sort of be here in a settled environment and not have the fear that your company may turn around and make you redundant, and then you have to up sticks the whole family to go back to the UK where things aren't that rosy there. I don't feel that they would have the same job capability. I think it's just a harder place to flourish there as an outsider. I think they would. I think also, say if my husband lost his job and we had to leave this year, to go and change all their education, and I think it would be tough. So we made that decision. I think it'll be good for them.
You can see why this is quite a problematic discussion for a lot of families. I guess we've never had that discussion in that I have girls as well. So the girls don't have to do national service, and every Singaporean male has to do it as well. So it's
Yes.
not just to clarify for those listening that
Yeah.
it's not just the permanent residents that have to do it, it's all the locals as well.
Totally.
I think that it's an interesting thing because there's a certain age cutoff for families that you've got to be out of here by the time that child turns a certain age, which I think is 12 or 13, isn't it? Because if you stay longer than that and then you happen to leave when they're like 16 and they don't come back and do their national service, then they can literally never come back to Singapore because they arrest them at the airport. So
yeah. Well, I think I've been told that they can come on holiday, but they couldn't ever get a job here again.
I see. That sounds way less grim than the the impression that I'd been given.
Yeah, I think it's, I think they're allowed to come on holiday. It's just not. Yeah, I mean, it was a big decision and it's not to be taken lightly. And also after, if they're in Singapore, I think it's every year or every other year, they have to do basic training for, I think, 2 weeks. Your company that you work for will pay, you have to get unpaid leave or paid leave, actually. I think they have to pay you to do your 2 weeks national service. I mean, the way I see it is they're keeping a fit society, really, in the male population. And, but essentially, they, I think Archie would love to work here after. I think he's very dedicated to Singapore. He thinks it's he sees it as a home, even though they lived in Malaysia all those years, but it was literally over the causeway and we were always coming in and out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so interesting. So tell me then, let's talk a bit about what it's looked like for you over these times. So obviously you were on board with the move and you finished up your whatever extended period of time in London, finishing off and rounding out work. And what was your capacity to work in those days here? Were you allowed to work as a dependent pass holder?
Easy to get an LOC. So any company could just fill in a form and get an LOC automatically. Now, an LOC is a letter of consent to work for a company. So it wasn't a work pass. It was just basically consent to work for that company. There were no hoops to jump through at all. I never tried to set up a business on my own, but I worked for several small businesses, helping them do stuff. There were no limited of having to work for certain numbers of hours. There was no salary, issues. It was just very simple. That changed quite dramatically, probably during COVID. Is it 2020 or 2021?
So it was pretty crazy until then.
Yeah, totally. It was 2021 because I remember hearing the news of it. It was March time, 2021. So yes, about 3 years ago that they changed it. And it's tough because now, any person who's a dependent pass can set up a business, but they have to apply to get this LOC, and it's under the proviso they get 1 year of this permission to work for their own company, and then within 9 months of working for that company on your own, your new business that you've just set up, you have to take on a local employee and they have to have a minimum salary of $1,400. And I know it's going up to $1,600 soon. And they have to work for you for at least 3 months. You have to show that in order for the Ministry of Manpower to give you your next LOC till say the end of your husband's new work pass. So I actually did do that last year, and I got an extension for 3 years, and I was so happy. And then, of course, we did PR, so it's now redundant. But it's hard for people because when you set up a business, you're not making huge amounts of money. You're certainly not wanting to employ somebody for $1,400 a month worth. And, I don't mean to talk negative of the regulations, but it is talking from a small business standpoint, it's not sustainable. And it is, the only thing is if you get a one pass, which is, the pass where you can, if you're earning over $30,000 a month, the husband that is, then they give the wife to the one pass holder a LOC to work for a business. So it gives them some flexibility. But actually, even if you set up a business on your own as a one pass holder with an LOC based on that, you still have to take on the employee. I think that's, what we've realized. So it's not fair, really, because, businesses don't grow that rapidly. I mean, the way I see it is, and, talking to Mega when she was working at Launchpad, she just said to me, you've got to see it as an expense of the business in the first year. Rather than tax, see it as this is what people have to pay in order to have that business, to move on to the next year. But it's not fun.
I've very much written it off as tax.
Yes, I think that's what you have to see. And if you're coming from somewhere like Australia where the tax is massive,
I was going to say I don't get many sympathetic ears in Australia. They were like, "Hang on, how much company tax are you paying?" Yeah, that's right.
But if you're earning like $2,000 a month, you wouldn't be taxed that much on it. So it's all relative to how successful. And for me, I saw it as a real pressure to work really hard. And I probably burnt myself out a little bit last year because I was like determined to make enough money to justify it. And so I've now got a different mindset over how who I work with, how I work, rather than being, the desperate person. I'm now more sort of calm, measured, sort of more flow-like.
So do you want to talk us through what that looked like, the business establishment sort of story, and how did this all sort of come about for you? Because you said you didn't work originally. What were you doing, and when did this sort of fit in the scheme of things?
Well, I mean, when I first moved across, I worked for sort of friends of friends I actually worked for culture management in the DBS contact centre. That was, 15 years ago now. And that was lovely. It was, a couple of days a week, and it was very, not much, not very stressful, really. And then I also did a part-time role helping, just doing admin, which was just to fill some time. We then got pregnant, and then that was, so then we moved across to Malaysia. And I worked for another company doing when my sons were, little. One was 3 and the other one was 1 and a bit. I started working for a company which was really very stressful. And we were making plans to move to Malaysia. We realized that, we wanted to. Paddy's job was happy in Asia, but the cost of living in Singapore was too much. And we decided we were going to send the youngest to Marlborough in JB, and the older one was having challenges. We actually sent him to the American school over there, but we bought our own home over there. And that for us was like being in our own home. It was a lovely big house. We put in a pool. It had a nice big garden, and it was in this sort of gated community. So that when we moved across there, that was like a sort of, okay, I'm just going to focus on the family and helping Archie because he had these educational challenges and behavioral challenges. And the whole process of helping my son deal with what was going on with his body, with this sort of, he had this massive candida overgrowth in his gut, was actually enlightening to me. It made me realize how important lifestyle was with regard to overall health, and how children, gut inflammation and the link to the neuroinflammation. So many kids' brains are inflamed nowadays because the diets they're eating and because of the dysbiosis they have in their guts. It's causing so many other inflammatory challenges in the body, and that, leaky gut, leaky brain. And so I was sort of, okay, I want to learn all about health. I was the least healthy person you've ever met in your whole life, as I've talked about, those fun party days in London. And so I then learned to become a boot camp trainer and a health coach, which was like, transformation. But it was lovely to be able to do. I had that space to do it. And I think that's what I love about being an expat to a certain degree, is that as a trailing spouse, you've got the world is your oyster. You've got all the time to be able to focus on something that you love and to change your life. And so I luckily, living in Malaysia, we didn't need two salaries coming in. I managed to follow my heart, and it was amazing. And then I studied, so from the health coaching, then I started studying functional medicine. And that, because I have a degree in chemistry, it's always really helpful because I've got all that science stuff going on, is that I can now really help people. And so now I'm gone from being like the trailing spouse to the person who's really helping people to transform their lives. And I find it the most amazing thing. So yeah, I'm lucky. I don't think I'd ever have even thought about it if we were living in the UK.
I think that's such an interesting point. The last few people that I've interviewed on the podcast have said something similar along the lines of I know a lot of people can find this time really challenging, and that real lack and loss of identity and place in the world and ability to generate income and all of those challenges that can come with following someone else's career somewhere else. But you're, like I said, you're one of a good number of people that have sort of said like that ability to embrace and to like really take advantage of the time and the space. And quite often if you're in a part of the world where there is actual domestic help as well, that
Oh,
is just
yes.
an experience that you don't actually get again, and that you can use this time to do something completely different or double down on stuff that you've been interested in the past. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that is something that people just need to keep hearing over and over. I think it's a reminder that you need to hear regularly when you feel like you're in a bit of a hole.
Yeah, totally. It's that reframing of sacrifice that you've been taken away from your family and your life. You create a new life and you have amazing new experiences, and you can travel to amazing places, and you can bring your family and friends over. And, it's incredible opportunity. And, I think I've enjoyed it to the max, really. You have your ups and downs, but I definitely feel, and with the family is in a much better place. My husband's in a much better place. If you've got one person who's supporting in the background, who's, thriving and, motivated, I think it really helps.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we don't talk about enough as well, is that the impact that that can have on the working spouse is that when they're not coming home to someone that's really sad or miserable or upset or angry,
Yeah.
that and that they come home to see someone that's like living best life, whether that's like mani pedis and cocktails at lunchtime, which I'm also
Yeah.
quite partial to. But to someone that is getting to utilize that time to study or to retrain or to really get involved or research or do all of those things that can come with using your time well.
Yeah, totally.
That's a far more joyous household to come home to than
Yeah.
one that is rather
Or,
problematic.
or both parents totally stressed because they're working as hard as they can to make enough money to feed the kids and to
Do
get
all the
them to
things.
school or whatever. So I do think sometimes splitting the load but in a slightly different manner, is definitely the way forward. And I think that's what being an expat helps, is that's how it allows people um, to thrive here, is to just not to see it as I've lost my work identity. I think maybe the hard thing is if, say, you're a lawyer or a doctor and you come over and you sort of stop working, but you can still work here as a lawyer or a doctor in fact, one of my bootcamp girls is a dentist and she's chosen not to work. She doesn't have a helper and she's not working. She's having some time out and she loves it. And that's, I think that's a really good thing, that she's there to just want to be supporting the family and enjoying that time out. So it's a mindset shift, definitely.
Mm. Now, I know it's a while ago, But is there anything that you wish you'd known at the start?
Wish I'd known.
Or that you would do differently?
Wish I'd known that house prices would go down in Malaysia. I'm joking. Things I'd do differently. No, I think we've sort of gone with the flow nicely. What would I do differently? No, I think, we had a point where my husband lost his job when Archie was a year old. And then we moved back to the UK, and it was sort of like, that's it, we're done as being expats. And I think that I wouldn't have moved all my furniture back to the UK and then back again.
Practical things like that.
Practical
but I think that what you've also said is something that can happen in these tumultuous times, that lots of people being laid off and lots of people changing jobs and finding it hard to find another job, especially in a place like Singapore. If you've got to be out of here, you and your family have got to be out of the country within 30 days if the job is lost. Like, that's problematic. But I think that what's quite inspiring listening to you guys is that happened, but you didn't end it. You went back, and 4 years is a good chunk of time. That's not going home for 6 months and finding something else. Like 4 years is a good.
No, we went
roots
back
down.
Yeah. No, so we'd been 3.5 years here, and we did a year and a bit back in the UK.
Got you.
So literally a short period.
Okay. Well, I was going to say that you were making me think even more that you got roots down again and then pulled them up and moved away again.
No, we'd only just sort of got started. And actually, it was a really quite stressful time being back in the UK because, it was. But I think you learn from it. That's the thing. So we look back on it as it was pretty awful. He'd lost his job. He did get a job pretty quickly, but it just wasn't very good quality of life. And but you learn. And actually, the job he got when he came back, which was actually for Bloomberg now, is a much better job anyway. So I think you just have to go through these. And I use this with pretty much everything in life. If something goes wrong, is what am I going to learn from this? How am I going to grow from this, rather than seeing it as, oh, woe is me, and the world hates me, that sort of thing. It's how am I going to learn from this?
I love that. Well, I think that's a beautiful piece of advice to wrap up on, Jo. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I've known you for a good while now, and I didn't actually know you guys had been here for that long. That's crazy.
Oldies. Yeah.
Oldies. Well, it's like an old guard. I feel like there's sort of stages. There's people that are here for like 2 years and then roll. And then there's the sort of 8 to 9 year mark ones. And then there's none in between until the like 18 to 20 year ones.
Yeah, totally. I know a few of the 18 to 20 year ones, or the 20. I think my friend at the weekend, I saw 22 years.
Wow.
Yeah, committed lifers.
I love it. Lovers, life.
Yes.
Love it. So good. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jo. It's been great hearing your story.
Thank you, Jo. It's lovely chatting.